All right, welcome back to this last part 4 series of preparing your Active Directory environment for the installation of Exchang Server 2007. This is a 4-part series. If you haven't watched part 1, 2, or 3, please go back and make sure you check them out. It's going to walk you through the whole process. So far what we've covered is how to prepare Active Directory in part 1, verifying things like your schema master, your FSMA roles, performing an AD health check, making sure you have a GC in every site. In part 2, making sure your DNS is properly configured. And in part 3, we demonstrated how to raise the domain functional level, how to install IIS to make sure we have the proper support, also making sure that we do not install the SMTP or NNTP services. We also, in part 3, demonstrated how to make sure that you have the MMC 3.0, the .NET Framework 2.0 or higher, and Windows PowerShell 1.0. And in this last part 4, right before we get ready to install Exchang Server 2007, we have to prepare the schema. Now, for this demonstration, I just want to show you what I'm working with here. This is a virtual machine environment, and I am on a domain controller. Once again, we remind you, don't install this on a domain controller in real life. Make sure you go to a member server and do it that way. But on this domain controller, what I've done is copy down the 32-bit version of the 120-day trial edition of Exchang Server 2007. And the reason we're working with this 120-day trial is because we can use it in a virtual machine environment. We could use it in a lab. It's a fully functional, 100% exactly the same as the real deal, which is the 64-bit edition. So there's the 32-bit and there's the 64-bit. You cannot use the 32-bit edition in a production environment. Microsoft is pushing us towards the newer, better hardware. 64-bit supports a lot more memory. I've seen servers supporting 128 gig of RAM, 256 gig of RAM, all sorts of great hardware out there that'll give you the kind of scalability you need in a production environment. Okay? Also noted is that the 32-bit version that I'm working with is the standard edition. The standard edition only supports 5 storage groups and 5 databases total. The 64-bit version comes with standard edition with the same limits, the 5 and 5, but you can also purchase the enterprise edition. I think it's around $4,000 retail, somewhere in that range for a basic license for the server product, and it'll support 50 storage groups and 50 databases total. Cut up whatever way you want to do it. So there's a lot of options out there when you go to perform your install. So I just want to make note on this last step here on preparing that you realize that we have the 32-bit trial edition, which is not a problem. Now when we go to do the install, we can extend the schema by running either setup.com or setup.exe. The difference between setup.com and setup.exe is that setup.exe is going to take us into the GUI and it will extend the schema. So I have a member server all set up, which is fine. Microsoft recommended best practice, of course, is to put your Exchang server on a member server. I put my CD or my DVD into that member server. I'm going to extend the schema. He'll find the schema master out on your network. You do not have to extend the schema on the same box that is the schema master. You can do it on a separate box. That's not a problem. So you do not have to extend the schema on the same box. You can do that on a separate box. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go out to the command prompt and take a look at how to extend the schema and prepare Active Directory from the command prompt. So we'll just go to the command prompt. Now I'm not going to the PowerShell, not the Windows PowerShell, just a regular plain old command prompt. And I'm going to change into my directory. So we're going to change into that Exchang directory. And I just did a tab complete. If you've never done that before, you can just type in the first few characters of the directory. You hit your tab key, and it brings it up in quotes, and it just takes you through anything that has that, matches that first couple of characters. And that's a quick way to get into a directory from the command prompt. And we can see that we have setup.com, and I'm going to run setup.com /?, and we can do a install, unintended install. There's a bunch of options there, and You know, the benefit of doing something from the command prompt is we can automate an install. If I work for a large ISP or some kind of company that's a hosting company of some kind that's going to provide services, maybe Exchange hosted services, and they're going to create many servers, I could take advantage of the setup.com and script the install of my Exchange server. Now, with that being said, I would think in most situations, for most people, you're going to want to install Exchange one step at a time. That way you can see what's going on. Okay? If you run setup.exe, you cannot see things happening one step at a time. If you run setup.com, you can perform some of these preparation steps one at a time. And obviously, if you're going to script something, you're not going to really be watching what's happening at all. So just keep in mind the whole concept of scripting and install is for either a real large deployment of many Exchange servers, maybe at an ISP, web hosting company, something like that. The average person or the average network administrator or Exchange administrator is not going to be scripting an install. That's my opinion anyway. I could be wrong. But we're going to take a look at this. We're going to do a setup.com/ps. Now, this is going to be to prepare the schema. So you can type in prepare schema, you can type it all the way out, or you can just use the shortcut for setup.com/ps. Now, the first thing it's going to do is go out and perform a prerequisite check to make sure I've met all the requirements. If you watched 1, 2, and 3, and you went through all those steps, you make sure your Active Directory is nice and clean, you're making sure your DNS is nice and clean, it should go through this prereq check fairly easily, complete without any errors, and you should be in good shape. So we'll let that complete. And there you can see completed nice and smooth. No errors, just the way we like it. No errors at all. And we'll let it go through and extend the schema. And again, it should go pretty smoothly at this point. We had no errors in the prerequisite checks, so the actual extension of the schema itself should go pretty smoothly. So we'll come back and look at this in just a minute. Just remember that the benefit of running setup.com versus setup.exe is that from the command prompt, we can actually watch each individual step complete successfully before we go on to the next step. I might even do something, for example, where I extend the schema and wait a day or two before I even go to the next step and actually do kind of one step at a time. Okay, and then the next step here will be to create the organization. So we'll just clear screen here and come back up and take a look at setup.com. PrepareAD. Now, since we're doing this from the command prompt, we have to specify the organization name. We'll make it Exchange 12 Rocks. And it'll go out there and do the prerequisite check. And so far, so good. If we had made any mistakes at all, any errors, so come back and tell us, yes, it's completed successfully. And we have the last step here is to actually configure the Exchange server. So we'll let this run. And it's finishing up the organizational preparation. And once it finishes that off, there's some more that we could do in the GUI, but at this point, I would say that this completes the Part 4 series of preparing your organization, your Active Directory organization for Exchange Server 2007 install. At this point, we're going to switch over to a new series, which will be installing Exchange Server 2007. So go check out the Installing Exchange Server 2007 video. You'll see that most of the work is in the preparation, and the actual installation itself is really pretty easy. As long as you do all the preparation, the installation is real smooth. So thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you in the next video installing Exchange Server 2007. Thank you.